The room went silent the moment he stepped in. Elias King, billionaire tech mogul, the man whose face was plastered on Forbes covers, whose name made investors sit straighter at boardroom tables. He didn't belong in a small, dimly lit restaurant in the heart of the city, but tonight, something had pulled him here. And then he saw her, standing by table 6, balancing a tray with steaming plates, her hair pulled back in a simple bun, wearing a worn apron that didn't belong on her. Naomi, his ex-wife, the woman who had given up her career, her savings, and her own dreams to help him build the empire that now made him untouchable. For a moment, the billionaire forgot how to breathe. Before we proceed, kindly subscribe. Naomi's eyes met his and froze just as hard. In those eyes, Elias didn't see the admiration she once had for him. No. Now there was only the kind of calm that comes after surviving a storm no one else knows about. The maitre d' rushed to greet Elias, almost tripping over himself. "Mr. King, sir, please, allow me to seat you in the VIP section." But Elias barely heard him. He was still staring at the woman he once swore to love until death. The same woman he left when the world started opening its golden gates for him. Back then, he told himself she'd be better off without the chaos of his rising fame. Truth was, he thought she'd hold him back. Now she was here, taking orders from customers who didn't even bother looking at her name tag. The restaurant buzzed again as Naomi turned away, pretending not to see him. Elias sat down, but his mind was on fire. What happened to her? How did the woman who once ran investor meetings in designer suits end up carrying plates to strangers? And why did she still look like she was winning something he couldn't see? The waiter came. Elias ordered something he wouldn't touch. His eyes followed Naomi all evening, each small movement burning deeper into his chest. He remembered the nights she stayed awake with him, drafting business plans while he coded until sunrise. He remembered how she sold her grandmother's land so they could rent their first office. And he remembered how easily he walked away when the world told him he didn't need her anymore. Halfway through his untouched meal, Naomi finally approached his table. Her voice was calm. "Is this seat taken?" Before he could answer, she sat down, tray still in hand, apron still tied, and gave him a look that pierced through his $10,000 suit. "Tell me something, Elias," she said, leaning in. "When you finally made it to the top, did it feel as good as you thought it would?" The billionaire's throat tightened, because for the first time in years, he didn't know the answer. Elias stared at the document on the table, as if it were a live grenade. It wasn't just any paper. It was the original equity agreement they'd signed together in the early days, before lawyers and investors got involved, before his name swallowed hers on every contract. And there it was in black ink. Naomi Carter, 49% ownership. I thought you signed this over years ago," Elias stammered, his voice low, so no one could hear. Naomi's lips curved, but it wasn't a smile. "You thought wrong. The only thing I signed, Elias, was the divorce papers, not my life's work." He felt a rush of heat crawl up his neck. If this document was real, and it looked very real, Naomi could drag his billion-dollar empire into court tomorrow. The investors would panic, stocks would plummet, and his name would be shredded. Elias leaned forward, keeping his voice sharp but quiet. "What do you want, Naomi? Money? Shares? An apology?" Her eyes didn't waver. "I want you to remember that without me, there is no Elias King. Without me, you'd still be fixing laptops in your mother's basement." The words sliced him open because they weren't lies. They were the truth he'd spent years burying. Before he could answer, Naomi stood up. "I'm on my break," she said, lifting her tray again. "We can talk more when my shift ends." The arrogance, the control, it was exactly the Naomi he remembered from those days when she closed deals while he built prototypes in the corner. Except now, she wasn't in his shadow. Elias tried to focus on anything else, but his mind kept spinning. If she had kept this one contract, what else had she kept? What else could she reveal? A group of young business journalists walked in and spotted him. Cameras came out. They were approaching. Naomi turned the sound of their footsteps, saw the lenses pointed toward him, and in that split second, Elias knew she was about to say something in front of everyone. something that could tear his carefully curated image apart. The flashbulbs went off like fireworks. Every reporter in the restaurant pivoted toward Naomi, their mics and cameras now trained on the tall black woman in a server's uniform and the billionaire sitting rigid in his chair. Elias forced a chuckle, trying to wave them off. "She's just joking," he said, but his voice cracked halfway through the sentence. Naomi didn't blink. "Do I look like I'm joking?" she asked, tilting her head. "When Elias King and I started our first company, we didn't have investors. We didn't have a safety net. We had each other. And I gave up my career, my savings, my entire life, so he could build his dream." Gasps rippled across the room. Phones were up now, live streaming. Elias's PR team was probably already getting tagged on Twitter. One reporter stepped forward. "Ma'am, are you saying you were part of the original business?" "I'm saying," Naomi replied, holding up the document, "I was half the business, and I never sold my share." Elias's throat went dry. This wasn't a boardroom. This wasn't a closed-door negotiation. This was a war zone where every word was ammunition, and Naomi was firing with perfect aim. He stood abruptly, trying to take her arm and usher her away from the growing crowd. "Naomi, let's talk outside." But she pulled back, eyes blazing. "No, Elias. For years, you controlled the narrative. You painted yourself as a self-made man, the genius who built it all from scratch. But here's the truth." She paused, looking directly into the nearest camera. "I'm the scratch." The room erupted. Some patrons clapped. Others whispered furiously. A couple of waiters had stopped working altogether, watching history unfold in front of them. Elias's phone buzzed nonstop in his pocket, his assistant, his lawyer, his head of PR, all probably screaming the same thing. "Shut her up before she ruins you." But it was too late. Naomi had stepped into the center of the room, her presence commanding more attention than the billionaire she was confronting. "Elias," she said, her voice calm but cutting, "I didn't come here for revenge. I came here to remind you and everyone else that success built on betrayal will always have cracks. And eventually those cracks become earthquakes." The cameras caught every word. And then, before he could stop her, Naomi turned and walked toward the kitchen, leaving Elias standing alone in the center of the restaurant, with every eye and every phone lens locked on him. Elias stepped outside into the cool night air, his pulse thundering in his ears. The call from the chairman still echoed in his mind. "We need to talk. Now." No greeting. No small talk. Just a sentence heavy enough to crush a man's chest. "Elias," the chairman continued, "is it true what she said?" Elias hesitated. "It's complicated." "Complicated?" The man's voice sharpened. "The press is running headlines that your fortune was built on stolen equity from your ex-wife. Investors are panicking. If this is true, we have a legal and ethical nightmare on our hands." Elias felt his grip on power slipping, like sand running through his fingers. "She doesn't have proof," he muttered. A pause. Then the chairman said, "She doesn't need proof. She has the public. And right now, they're ready to burn you alive." The line went dead. Elias stood frozen on the curb. Cameras still flashed from across the street. He thought of Naomi's eyes, calm, unshaken, like someone who already knew the ending of the story. Meanwhile, Naomi stood in a modest but warmly lit office on the other side of town. The server's uniform was gone, replaced by a sharp navy blazer. On the desk before her sat the real document, an original signed partnership agreement with Elias's signature in black ink. Beside her, a young black attorney scrolled through their social media feed, grinning. "Naomi, the clip of you in that restaurant has over 8 million views. The public's eating it up. And the investors? They're calling. Not him. You." Naomi smiled faintly. "Good. Because this was never about humiliating him. It was about showing every woman who gave up her dreams for a man that you can take them back. With interest." She placed the document into a folder stamped with the logo of her new firm, King and True Equity Consulting, a business dedicated to helping women reclaim stolen opportunities and unpaid contributions. 1 week later, the headlines were relentless. "Billionaire resigns amidst partnership scandal." Naomi King's story inspires a wave of lawsuits from women entrepreneurs. Elias had been forced out of his own company. The board moved swiftly to protect shareholder trust. His penthouse was listed for sale. His name was no longer spoken with admiration at high society galas. It was whispered with pity and disdain. Naomi, on the other hand, was busier than ever. Each case she took wasn't just about money. It was about rewriting the ending for women who had been erased from their own success stories. Late one evening, after signing off on another high-profile settlement, Naomi looked out her office window at the city skyline. She thought of Elias, not with hatred, not even with satisfaction, but with a quiet understanding. He had taught her the most valuable lesson of all. The best revenge isn't to destroy your enemy. It's to build a life so unshakable, their downfall feels irrelevant. She turned back to her desk, picked up the next case file, and smiled, because her work had only just begun. Kindly subscribe for more interesting and powerful stories.